What's up, fam? I'm Ryan Milton from TeamFFLEX. Here on my show we do every Friday right here, TeamFFLEX TV, called Gainz O'Clock. Now, normally we're diving into Q&A on this show where we're talking about all your questions, giving you guys all my answers that hopefully are going to help you and then help anybody else watching the damn show, right? Because if you get something out of it, it's likely somebody else out there has that same question, that same need for an answer, in other words, right? And so it's a really good show in general to do exactly that. Remember, it's just one of 5 shows I run all week for you, though, giving you free content. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, all right? And if you get anything out of the video, as always, please share it out. Today, I want to dive right on in and talk about competing in 2020, all right? I always put a little poll on Instagram or on my other social media saying, hey, what are your questions for Gainz O'Clock? And everybody is asking me pretty much one question at this point in time. So I'm going to dedicate the entire episode today to talking about competing in 2020. Should you compete? Should you take some time off? What, answer some things. What are your worries? What are your there's been so much. I'm going to cover it all right here, you guys. So first thing I want to talk about. Shows are back, ladies and gents. That's what you got to understand. We went through this phase of time where competitions were not happening, right? Obviously, there was the large extension of no shows when coronavirus, this pandemic, hit the country and really shut a lot of things down. I mean, that's happened worldwide. It hasn't just happened here. It's literally been all over the world where shows got stopped. They weren't allowed to happen and so on and so forth. But since, late June, really, we've kind of seen the scene coming back. And now it's really coming back in a lot of different areas in the country right now where you can compete. And I know a lot of people don't per se live in these areas, so you might not understand that. That's why I want to say that. Yeah, there are bodybuilding shows happening, and yeah, they're going to continue to happen and continue to grow and continue to move forward, okay? So first thing you got to understand, NPC, IFBB bodybuilding, it is back. It is rolling. And remember, when I say bodybuilding, I'm talking about all divisions, not just the men's bodybuilding. I'm talking about, bikini, wellness, figure. These shows are happening again. That might be a better way to put it. Shows are happening again. People are competing again. People that were on prep have stayed on prep this whole time. People are getting on prep now, right? And we're kind of at a pivotal point where we're at the end of the year. It is August already, obviously, which is kind of crazy to say, but we're late August at this point as I'm recording this video. And we literally, we got like 4 months left in this year. We don't have a lot of time left in the year, 3-4 months to go, which means basically anybody who has not started a prep yet, you're going to have to make that decision over the next few weeks because you're going to be needing to compete over that period of time in the next 12 weeks, right? So basically, it's a pivotal point where you got to factor in some things. And everybody wants to know, hey, what do you think? Should we be competing? What should we be doing? Obviously, you guys know on TeamFFLEX we coach tons and tons and tons and tons of athletes that are going to be competing, that want to compete, that are always competing. And I'm going to tell you guys straight up my opinion, what I think, some things for you to consider, some things that could maybe help you find your answer, because I know it's been a crazy year. It's been a stressful time. It's still a very stressful time for a lot of people, and a lot of people want to know what to do, what direction to take, and their coaches just can't tell them. Obviously, a lot of people can't tell you, but I'm going to tell you how to figure out for yourself what to do with your competition schedule with 2020. Should you compete? Should you take time off? What are the other options? What should you be doing? And hopefully, by the end of this, I'll have given you guys something that is really helpful, that will help you come to a conclusion, come to an answer there with what you should do this year. And we'll get to all that just in a second.
1, 2, 3!
All right, so let's cover the first side of the coin, right? Because really we're looking at two. We're looking at two things. Should you be competing? Are you going to compete? Are you about to start a prep? Are you going to finish the prep you're on? Were you one of the people that competed and your show got canceled and now you don't know what to do? Were you one of the people that got postponed? You don't know what to do? Well, that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin would be then you're not going to be competing, right? So we'll start with this first bit and talk about competing in 2020 and some things you want to consider, all right? So I know the number one question that everybody has had, are shows happening? Where are shows happening? Is there chances my show is going to get canceled? Is there chances it will get postponed? I mean, I've been hearing this stuff all year, you guys, literally all year since this has all really hit, early March, but even before that, where, people were getting worried about it. The pandemic started, obviously, things were getting closed down. We saw this in the biggest way right out the gate with the Arnold, right? And the Arnold, the whole expo got just cut a few days out, and it was crazy, but it was what they did because of the pandemic going on, and that was kind of the first thing that set the motion forward, and obviously we've seen, everything else scale up from there, but we've also had a lot of shows get canceled. A lot of shows postponed. Some shows are not coming back for this year at all. They're going to be, returning next year. There's a lot of stuff that's gone on. And, I try to talk to all my followers and people that follow the page. And I'm hearing from all these different competitors for this entire year, that they lined up to do 2, 3, 4, 5 shows and they all got dropped. They all got postponed. They still want to compete, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's what I want to say. There is, in this world today, 2020, no guarantees of anything, you guys. I got to be honest with you. There's literally no guarantees. We have no idea what's going to happen. I can guarantee you this. The NPC and the IFBB and these promoters and these coaches and everybody else that's involved in these shows, these sponsors and vendors and everything else, they want these things to go on, okay? They do want them to happen, and they do everything that they can possibly do to make these happen. Follow every regulation, every rule, and take it beyond that even, right? Go above and beyond the actual requirements to get these shows to go. And that's why we're seeing these ones that have been happening actually happen despite restrictions and things like that. They're following the rules and they're getting them done, and it's working, and that's great. That's going to happen. But that's not the end of the coin here, right? Because when you're talking about a show, a competition happening, you're talking about each individual government that's regulating it. So in other words, every state. Starting with, of course, United States, then moving into each individual states. And obviously, if we're not just talking about the U.S., we're talking about worldwide, this is the same thing going on. There are different restrictions, different regulations, and different hoops to go through to put events on in different parts of the world right now. And so you're really looking at that. That's what really shut down the competitions in the first place. And a lot of the ones that you've seen getting postponed, getting canceled, it's because of those regulations that just could not happen, could not get it to go on. So that's one thing. That's what you really got to understand right at the gate. As much as the promoters want these things to happen, the organization wants these things to happen, athletes, coaches, everybody, if there's rules that prevent it, there's nothing that can be done when it comes down to the government, right? And so that's one factor you really got to consider. Now, that's not it, though, right? We're talking about also the venue. In the venues where these events run, these things could be changing. You've seen a lot of them change. I've seen a lot of them change. I know that they were set for here and they're moving here. And these are because, again, the rules of the venue then are also what dictates if the promoters can run the events and if the shows can happen and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different things that could cause your schedule to change even still in 2020, right? Obviously, the pandemic has been going on. It's still going on. It hasn't stopped. It's not going to stop tomorrow night. It's going to continue on, right? If we want to be realistic, based on everything that's being talked about, it's probably going to continue to move forward. So with that, we can expect some more changes. Now, there will also be on the turn of that coin events that do not change. There's going to be spots where they're not affected by this nearly as bad, or the regulations and the rules being put on are not nearly as restrictive, right? So, for example, we're seeing a lot of restriction in areas like California and things like that. Not as much nearly in areas like Texas and Florida and things like that. So there's a lot of shows happening out in these areas where they are going on and they are being successful, and that's what's happening. And we're seeing a lot of events move to areas where things are happening. So that's one thing to consider. Your travel plans, you might need to adjust them. You might need to move to a different spot to do your competition. Your venue might change, but hey, that's all right. The shows are going on. They're going to go on. It's possible that they could still obviously get postponed, canceled, everything else. But these guys, let me tell you, guys, I'm telling you the truth. The organization, NPC, IFBB, and everybody involved, from promoters and everyone else that runs these shows, they're doing every single thing they can, okay? And that's kind of what my next point is going to be, actually. I know a lot of people have been concerned about the fact of if everything is clean, right? If everything is following the rules. Is it dangerous, in other words, to go out and do these events? And what I've said the whole time, if you guys have watched some of the live I've done with Sandy Williamson and some of these other, big names, the promoters in this game, in other words, and We talked about this. We talked about some of those shows at Spectrum, Fitness Productions. We've talked about a lot of different shows. I've done a lot of content on this over the past few months. I would say it's safer to compete probably in a bodybuilding show than it is to go to the grocery store, because the regulations that the bodybuilding shows are following in the NPC and the IFBB, I can't speak for other federations, they are immaculate. They are impressive, you guys. I've been to actual competitions this year. I've gone back since the pandemic has happened, and it's amazing to see what is going on as far as the regulations and, you know, following the social distancing guidelines and having hand sanitizers everywhere, temperature checks and social distancing and everything else. It's just been really great to see that these events can still happen and still go on. And like I said, honestly, like when I would go to these events and I saw these things and I saw the effort that the promoters and the organization and everybody else is putting in to make sure they're successful, those regulations and everything that they fit to, the rules and all that they were adapting to, they took above and beyond, and they did even better with them than what was required. And I seriously felt safer being at these events than I did going to the grocery store, going out anywhere else at that point. So, you know, we've seen masks at shows, we've seen masks for people that are not competing, not on stage. We've seen a lot of different things, but my point is these shows are safe. What's being done is to the highest degree possible and then beyond, you guys. So that's one thing I know that people have been worried about. You want to take into consideration. Obviously, you know, you can never say anything is 100% safe, but if you open your door, you go outside, you check your mail, you know, you're going to get gas at the gas station, you go get food at the grocery store, you're doing the same type of exposure potential, in other words, you know, as you are competing in a bodybuilding show. In other words, it's not a worse environment in any way, and honestly, I do believe personally, my own personal experience and my own opinion, that it is far safer to go to a bodybuilding event than it is to go to the store. So with all that being said, these events, like I said, they're going to happen. They're going to go on. It's going to go. So now you need to make the decision as a competitor out there. If you want to compete, you can. I kind of just cleared the air for you on two things. The shows are going to happen. They're also safe. They're following all the guidelines. If we believe the guidelines, then these are as safe as they could possibly be, and then some, honestly. And so you can compete, ladies and gentlemen. You athletes out there wondering, you people that want to do it for the first time, you people, you know, that have been prepping all year trying to get on stage, you still got time. There are so many shows that are going to happen over the next few months, you guys. It's crazy. All the nationals are at the end of this year too. Like, they're all fitting into this last 4 months of this year. So it could be by far your best chance to even get a pro card if that's your goal, because you could literally hit these events so close together, get feedback, come back better, get feedback, come back better, and get that pro card, right? And so really, if you want to compete, you can compete. And I know a lot of people do want to compete, and a lot of people will compete, and that's great. That's awesome. You should compete. And I really do strongly encourage all of you out there, if you can, to do this, because it's going to support your goals. It's going to support yourself. It's also going to support the organization, you guys, and everything in bodybuilding in general, this sport, because everything has taken a hit this year to the degree that, you know, obviously we know in your own lives and everybody's lives and business worldwide, you know, it's taken a massive hit. That's the same for everything. And so if you want to support bodybuilding, you want to support the stages that you love competing on, these promoters that have done everything to do this work to make these things happen in the best way possible for you, then it is good if you compete, right? And it's always obviously going to be good for your health and wellness to stay on top of your nutrition and your dieting. I know a lot of people during quarantine fell into bad habits. A lot of people ended up drinking too much, and, you know, you hear about all this kind of stuff on the news and whatnot, but people got unhealthy. And that's not just to say that, oh, you have to be drinking yourself, binge drinking every night to be unhealthy. No, a lot of people started eating worse. A lot of people started being less active. A lot of people weren't going to gyms because they closed down. So, you know, it's a good thing for yourself. It's also good for the entire sport of bodybuilding if you can get yourself out there and compete. And again, remember what I said, these shows are going to happen, and they're doing it to the measures that are required to make sure it's as safe as possible for you if you do decide to compete. And honestly, I do encourage it. Let's talk a little bit about that flip side of the coin, though, because I know there's some of you out there that can't. You just won't. And things are going to happen where you need to figure out now, hey, is it time to compete or is it time for improvement season? So we're going to talk about improvement season in just a second. right, so improvement season, you guys understand this first. That's my version of off season, right? You guys hear about this off season. I'm not an advocate of that. We on TeamFFLEX, we always train our athletes 365, and that's what we do. We train them through all phases. We do improvement season phases, okay? So basically what that is we're still gonna follow a diet. We're still gonna be training. We're still gonna be following a program. We still got goals. That's really what it is, and that's what it means. We're getting better. We're improving for when we come back to stage, and so that's what we do on TeamFFLEX. That's why I strongly encourage, if you want to check out our coaching approach, by the way, make sure you go to our website, TeamFFLEX.com, and you can subscribe to our free trial right there on the pop-up. But the point is here, a lot of people want to know, is it better for me to do improvement season right now? Is it better for me to prep? Well, I just covered a lot of the big, questions, concerns, things people have voiced to me about competing, and I gave you guys my opinion. Obviously, that's just my opinion. I'm not a doctor. I'm not, the organization itself or anything like that. I can't speak on behalf of anybody. That's just my opinion and what I think from a coach that coaches people to compete in these competitions. But improvement season is another topic, obviously, that comes up when it says, should I just take the remainder of 2020 off, right? Improvement season, off season, and then gear up for a new season in 2021. Basically, hopefully after things have been mitigated, things have changed, the pandemic has died down. Obviously, people are hoping that's what happens. And so I'm going to tell you guys what I think about that. The improvement season is by far not a bad thing to do if that's a situation you're in. Like I said, based on what I think you should all do as a competitor, I think you should try to compete if possible for the reasons I stated. But there's a lot of people out there that can't do it this year because of everything that has happened. And that means, financially you've taken a hit. Maybe you got laid off. Maybe you didn't get the same amount of money. Maybe you were, you weren't able to work or whatever's going on, or those type of things are a factor you have to consider, ladies and gentlemen. So that's definitely one thing. Obviously, I would never say go break your bank trying to, jump on stage this year. Instead, I would say, you know what, maybe do an improvement phase and come hit the spring season, because we'll still be doing shows then. They're still going to be happening. That's going to all go, and you'll be in a better spot to do it if you wait until you're ready, right? So finances and things like that, that's very important consideration for people competing. If you're not in a spot to do the kind of competitions, to travel, to do all that, to register and do those things, it might be better to just actually wait, save some money, get a new job, whatever it takes to get yourself back and ready for next year. And in the meantime, you don't by any means slack off. You're not wasting your time. You're going to improve, right? The goal should be to continue to live the lifestyle, continue to do what you can to support these events, right? Maybe you can buy the live stream or, go see a show if they allow audiences, things like that, to help support the organization still. But if you can't afford to do all the travel and competing, all that, it could be a good idea to do an improvement phase and gear up for 2021 basically at that point, right? Because we're talking about the years literally coming to an end over the next 3-4 months, which is crazy to say, but it's true. So that's one thing to consider. Another thing to consider is your own kind of health right now going on, ladies and gents. I know a lot of people physically and mentally, you could be in a different spot where maybe it's not the best decision for you to compete right now. Mentally, things have taxed people a lot this year. It's been a very stressful year for a lot of people. I know working with my own clients, people have gone through all different waves and all different phases and all kinds of different problems this year, and that has led to a lot of things that could make it so, adding more to your plate right now is just not the best thing for you to do. It could be a good idea to take some time to do the improvements and to come back, next season, obviously. And when we're talking about improvements in this sense, obviously we're talking about all the same things, nutrition, training, but also mindset, really working on your mind, getting, yourself back to a spot where you're less stressed out, you're not dealing with so many problems, and a lot of factors that come into that. There's also the side of your physical health, okay? And this has happened to a number of people, two sides of the coin here. You could be in worse physical health this season, actually, coming in as a competitor. If you were one of the competitors that kind of fell off during this time, and it's happened to a lot of people. Like I said, these other things, these stresses, these layoffs, and the job situations, and just this pandemic overall have stressed a lot of people out, and that leads to, unfortunately, bad habits. Like people end up eating too much, or eating the wrong things, or drinking, or whatever else, and that can really, honestly, kind of hinder your physique at some point. If you've done enough of that, it's gonna cause you some hindrance to your progress. It's gonna probably set you back, and you could be in a spot where you might be coming to compete worse than you've done. So that's one thing you want to consider, right? That's one kind of the coin. Not to say you couldn't improve and do it in time. You absolutely could, but it's one consideration. Maybe you need more time. Maybe you want to wait and just improve and come back better and do better next year, right? That's one thing. Another thing is for all you competitors that prepped for too long this year, right? A lot of people were gearing up for shows in March, meaning they started prep in literal January or December last year or the beginning of this year, and then the shows that were in March, some of them got canceled right then, and some people were prepping for further out. Those got postponed, and so literally there's been some competitors that have been competing, training competition-wise, literally in prep since the beginning of this year to now, and some people, I've obviously had to pull back off that already and take a break and do the improvement phase earlier, but some people are still going. And so, it's definitely possible to do if you're being coached well and it's an environment that's working. But if your physical health is being taxed by the fact that you're on this prep, you're constantly fatigued, you're getting hormone side effects, you're getting metabolism side effects, you're in a bad spot just in general physically, pains and aches and all these problems coming from your actual prep regimen, it could be a time to say, it's time to pull back, time to do an improvement phase, and it's time to come back and compete in 2021 in other. See, it's like the whole year's gone by. In 2021, in other words, right? So it could be another way to consider it. And everything comes kind of full circle with what I'm going to say next. Hopefully I've given you guys two sides of this coin here. Obviously shows going on. Should try to compete if you could. If you want to do it, you guys, it's good to be out there. It's good for everybody involved, good for you, good for the whole sport. If you can compete, that's what you want to do. That's what your coaches want you to do. That's what the promoters want you to do. That's what the organization wants you to do. That's what you want to do. So if that's you, do it. If you're in a spot like some of these other people though that I mentioned, improvement season could be something to consider. And here's what I want to say, kind of finalize it up for you guys. Both of these sides of the coin I gave you are just my personal opinion. This is just based on what's going on in my life this year, what I've seen going on with my athletes' lives this year, what I know is going on in general just in the environment from talking to so many people and knowing what's going on in the sport and everything else. And so those are my opinions. The way that you figure out what you should do this year and then with the rest of the season, if you compete, if you don't, when you compete, what show, all that, you got to figure it out for yourself. It's your own choice, ladies and gentlemen. The sport of bodybuilding, as much as we put teams together and we do all these things are all great for the sport. It's all great and it's all awesome to have, a team that you compete with and everything else. And it's great to have your coach and everybody else involved. But at the end of the day, the sport of bodybuilding, it's about you. It's about you and your own journey. You getting better, you physically getting better, you mentally getting better, you going through personal development to get better. I've often said and will always say, bodybuilding is the greatest sport on this planet because of the physical and mental benefits it forces you to have to be able to every single day wake up, look at yourself, figure out what you need to improve on and do better. It's a challenge constantly and it always is a growing sport. It's a lifelong sport. It's not a 12-week sport, ladies and gentlemen. If you're in this for the 12-week, it's not the sport for you. This is a sport that no matter what phase you're in, prep, improvement season, year after year, whatever, you're always doing what it takes to get better, to come back, do more, and get better. And this sport never ends, right? We got from true novice to masters and beyond in this sport, and you can literally compete your entire life if you really wanted to. That's what this is about, and that's really what it should be about. It should be about the lifestyle. And at the end of the day, figuring out if you want to compete in the next 12 weeks, or figuring out if you want to do an improvement season, or whatever, it's not going to ever be the make or break if you're committed to being a part of the sport and being a competitor. And if that's you and when you're living the lifestyle of bodybuilding, you're living this for your own goals, for yourself, and you want to get on stage for yourself, that's really what you should be doing it for. And that's kind of how you figure this out. So hopefully I've given you guys some perspective, some ideas, some things to think about, address some concerns I've heard. I'm sure there's more. If you got questions, you guys, or anything else, I will answer them to the best of my ability. Again, not a doctor or anything like that. I'm not some kind of expert in any way on infectious diseases or anything else, and I'm not in any way speaking on behalf of the NPC and the IFBB organizations. I'm giving you guys my perspective as a coach, my ideas, what I think could be beneficial for you to think about, what I could think could be beneficial for you in general. But again, I'm not a doctor. You got to make your own decisions, and that's why at the end of the day, you got to really figure out what you want to do. Is this the time for you to get on stage? Is this the time for you to wait? Is this the time for you to continue in an improvement phase, or is it time to go get your first place trophy, right? You got to figure these things out for yourself. Everything I said literally comes down to your own personal life anyway, what you got going on in your own life, what's going on, you know, in your government, your state, your location, the shows available, and then your own money, your own finances, your own time, your own travel, your own everything, right? You got to figure out what's right for you. It's your own journey at the end of the day. You got to make the decision. That's life. That's what we do, ladies and gents. So hopefully you got something out of that. I hope you did for sure. If you did, you guys, do me a favor, subscribe, and then share out the video. I'll be back next week. This is just one of 5 shows I run all week for you. That's exactly why I think you should subscribe to TeamFFLEX TV. All right? Thank you for being here. I'm Ryan Milton from TeamFFLEX. Coach Rye is out.